Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we have quite a focused mission, really. We're taking a single, absolutely pivotal chapter, Matthew 17, and we're going deep.
Just using biblical analysis, cross-references, really trying to pull out the core insights.
Exactly. Insights about divine authority, the necessity of suffering, which is a huge theme, and, well, what it actually means to be a disciple.
And Matthew 17 is such a journey in itself. It goes from this incredible peak of heavenly glory straight down into, human struggle and doubt. It's quite the ride.
It really is. And the context, as you mentioned before we started, is just so important. Where does this chapter sit in Matthew's story?
Right. It's crucial to remember we're immediately following Caesarea Philippi. That's where Peter makes that landmark confession. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God.
The turning point.
Absolutely. But right after that high point, Jesus drops the bombshell. His first clear prediction that he, the Messiah, must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things, be killed, and be raised.
Which the disciples just could not handle at that point. Peter even rebukes him.
Exactly. So Matthew 17 isn't just happening in a vacuum. It feels like it's providing this necessary, almost staggering glimpse of Jesus' true divine glory before that path turns irrevocably towards the cross.
It's like a divine reassurance, maybe, showing them who he really is before they see him suffer.
I think that's a great way to put it. A moment of maybe divine calibration for them. They needed this vision of the king in majesty before witnessing his ultimate humiliation.
Okay, let's dive into the text itself then. Part 1, the Transfiguration. It starts with such specific timing in verse 1. Can you read that for us?
Sure. Matthew 17, verse 1, Matthew 17.1. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, his brother, and brought them into a high mountain by themselves.
After 6 days. That feels very deliberate. Not about a week later or some days later. Why 6 days?
Oh, that precision immediately signals something significant. Many scholars, and I think rightly so, see a direct link back to Mount Sinai, specifically Exodus chapter 24.
Okay, refresh our memory on that one.
In Exodus 24, verses 12 through 18, Moses goes up the mountain to receive the law. And the text says, the glory of the Lord settled on Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. Then, on the 7th day, God calls Moses out of the cloud.
Ah, I see. So the 6 days here in Matthew sets up an expectation. This isn't just a hike. It's another Sinai moment. A moment of profound revelation is coming.
Precisely. And notice the exclusivity. Just like Sinai in some ways, Jesus takes only Peter, James, and John.
His inner circle.
Yes, these are the same three who get this privileged view of his glory, and later, they're the only ones he takes deeper into the Garden of Gethsemane during his agony. Remember Matthew 26.37.
Right, so there's a connection between witnessing his glory and witnessing his suffering.
It seems so. This restriction highlights the sacredness, maybe even the overwhelming power of this revelation. It wasn't for everyone at this stage, which is why Jesus later tells them to keep it secret in verse 9.
And the parallel with Moses taking a select few, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu up the mountain in Exodus 24, verses 1 and 9, that just reinforces it, doesn't it?
It really does. It positions Jesus as the ultimate prophet, the ultimate lawgiver. The revelation isn't external anymore, like stone tablets. It's embodied in his person.
Which leads us straight into the transformation itself in verse 2. The language is just stunning.
It truly is. Verse 2, Matthew 17.2. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light.
Transfigured. That word feels weighty. What's the original Greek telling us?
The Greek is metamorpho. It means a change in form, a transformation. Here, it's a visible outward change that reveals his inner divine glory. It wasn't that he became divine then. His inherent divinity shone through his humanity for a moment.
So it's a glimpse of his true nature breaking through.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how this same word, metamorpho, gets used later in the New Testament, not for a physical event, but for our spiritual lives.
Ah, okay. Where do we see that?
Well, most famously, in Romans 12.2, Paul tells us, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed metamorphos by the renewal of your mind.
So the change we undergo as believers uses the same root word as Jesus' transfiguration.
Yes. And also, in 2 Corinthians 3.08, where it says, we are being transformed metamorphosed into the same image from one degree of glory to another.
Wow. So the glory the disciples saw physically on the mountain is, in a spiritual sense, the very thing we're meant to be growing into.
That seems to be the implication. They saw the ultimate goal, the source code for our own transformation revealed in him. It's quite profound when you connect those dots.
And the description, face shone like the sun. Where else do we see sun-like radiance?
Well, Jesus uses similar language in Matthew 13.43, describing the righteous who will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. And of course, it echoes Moses' face shining after being with God in Exodus 34.
So it's clearly divine, heavenly radiance, and the clothes white as the light.
Again, think supernatural purity. Matthew uses similar language, incredibly white, to describe the angel's appearance at the tomb in Matthew 28.3. It's the whitest white imaginable, purity beyond earthly comparison.
Okay, so we have Jesus revealed in glory, but then he's not alone, verse 3.
Right, verse 3 adds another layer. Matthew says 17.3. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him.
Moses and Elijah, the heavyweights of the Old Testament.
Absolutely. Moses representing the law, the foundation. Elijah representing the prophets, the ongoing voice of God through Israel's history.
Their presence here is huge. It's like the entire Old Testament is pointing to Jesus, standing alongside him, affirming him.
It signifies continuity. Jesus isn't discarding the past. He's fulfilling it. And it's significant that both Moses and Elijah had their own dramatic mountain encounters with God, Sinai, and Horeb.
And Luke's gospel adds a crucial detail about their conversation, doesn't it? What were they talking about?
Yes. Luke 9.31 tells us they were speaking about his departure. The Greek word is exodos, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem.
His death. So even in this moment of ultimate glory, the conversation is about the cross.
Isn't that striking? The path to fulfilling God's plan, the very reason for his coming, involves this necessary suffering death. The glory and the cross are intrinsically linked right from this moment.
Which makes Peter's reaction in verse 4 even more, well, poignant maybe.
Definitely poignant and revealing. Verse 4, Matthew 17.4. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah.
Lord, it is good for us to be here. You can feel the awe, but then the suggestion, 3 tabernacles or booths.
Yeah, Peter, bless him, always impulsive. He wants to capture the moment, maybe extend it. Building booths or tabernacles evokes the Feast of Tabernacles, remembering God dwelling with his people in the wilderness. It often symbolized heaven meeting earth.
So his intention might have been good, wanting to honor them all.
The intention was likely reverence, yes, but the theology was flawed. What's the big mistake he makes here?
He puts them on the same level, one for Jesus, one for Moses, one for Elijah.
Exactly. He equates the Son of God with the servants. He's trying to monumentalize the moment, perhaps create shrines. But he fails to grasp Jesus' unique supremacy. He sees Jesus as the greatest of the 3, maybe, but not in a category all his own.
And God the Father immediately corrects this misunderstanding. Verse 5 is just powerful.
It's an immediate divine interruption. Verse 5, Matthew 17.5. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him.
That bright cloud, that's not just weather, is it?
No, that's the Shekinah glory, the visible manifestation of God's own presence. The language used here mirrors the Greek Septuagint's description of God's glory filling the tabernacle in Exodus 40.35. When this cloud appears, it's God himself arriving.
And the voice confirms Jesus' identity, just like at his baptism.
Yes, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. That echoes Matthew 3.17. But then comes the crucial addition.
Listen to him.
That's the command. That's the correction to Peter. Don't build shrines to Moses and Elijah alongside Jesus. They were preparatory. He is the one with ultimate authority. He is the one you must listen to now, especially regarding the difficult path of suffering he just spoke about.
It redirects all attention, all authority, solely onto Jesus.
Completely. Moses and Elijah fade into the background. They are attendants to the king. The focus must be on the Son.
And the disciples' reaction to hearing the Father's voice, verse 6.
Pure terror, verse 6, Matthew 17.6. And when the disciples heard this, they fell upon their faces and were greatly afraid.
It wasn't the light or the prophets that terrified them. It was the direct voice of God.
The unmediated presence and voice of the Father. That's Old Testament holy fear. But notice how Jesus responds. Verse...
Matthew 17.7. And Jesus came and touched them and said, Rise up and do not be afraid.
That touch is so important. The mediator, the Son, bridges the gap between the terrifying holiness of the Father and the fear of the disciples. He brings comfort and reassurance.
And when they finally look up, the scene has resolved. Verse 8.
Matthew 17.8. And lifting up their eyes, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone.
Moses and Elijah are gone. The cloud is gone. The voice is silent. Only Jesus remains.
The focus is absolute. The law and the prophets have given their testimony. Now attention must be solely on the Son.
Which explains the command for silence as they come down, verse 9.
Exactly, verse 9, Matthew 17.9. And as they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus commanded them, saying, "Tell the vision to no one until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead."
Why the secrecy? Wouldn't this vision convince people?
It might convince them of the wrong thing. Without the context of the suffering, death, and resurrection, this vision could easily be misinterpreted as, a sign of imminent political takeover, a conquering Messiah.
Reinforcing the very expectation Jesus was trying to correct.
Precisely. The glory makes sense only in light of the resurrection that follows the suffering. The timing is critical. The vision needs the full story to be understood correctly.
Okay, so they're coming down from this incredible, literally mountaintop experience, told to keep silent, and their minds are buzzing, and they immediately latch on to one figure they saw up there, Elijah.
Right. The prophetic implications are swirling. Verse 10 gives us their question, Math 17.10. And the disciples asked him, saying, "Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?"
They're connecting the vision to prophecy, specifically Malachi chapter 4, verse 5, right?
Yeah.
That Elijah would come before the great day of the Lord.
Exactly. They've just seen Elijah. The scribes say Elijah must come first. So their logical conclusion is, okay, is this it? Is the final kingdom about to be established now?
Makes sense from their perspective, but Jesus' answer in verse 11 seems, well, almost to agree with the scribes at first.
It does, and it's important to see how he handles it. Verse 11, Matthew 17.11. And he answered and said, "Elijah is indeed coming and will restore all things."
He says Elijah is coming, future tense. That sounds like he's confirming the scribes' expectation of a future return.
He affirms the principle of the prophecy, yes. The idea that an Elijah figure would come to prepare the way to call for restoration, likely meaning repentance, is correct. There's a sense in which that ultimate fulfillment might still be future.
Okay, so he affirms the general prophecy, but then he immediately clarifies the current situation, doesn't he? Verse 12.
Precisely. This is the crucial part. Verse 12, Matthew 17.12. "But I say to you that Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but they did to him whatever they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man also is about to suffer at their hands."
Elijah has already come. He's talking about John the Baptist.
Unmistakably. And notice the link. They did not recognize him, and they mistreated him, killed him. And then the devastating parallel. In the same way, the Son of Man also is about to suffer at their hands.
Wow. He uses the rejection and murder of John the Baptist, the Elijah figure, as a direct foreshadowing of his own fate.
It's a chilling connection. It tells the disciples, and us, that if the authorities and the people miss the forerunner, they're almost certainly going to miss the Messiah himself. John's suffering paves the way for understanding Jesus' suffering.
It reframes the whole idea of restoration. It's not going to be political power. It's going to involve rejection and sacrifice.
Exactly. And the disciples, having seen Elijah, having heard the prophecy, now finally get it. Verse 13, Matthew 17.13. Then the disciples understood that he had spoken to them about John the Baptist.
The pieces click into place. Understanding John correctly helps them understand Jesus correctly.
Yes. And this theme of necessary suffering doesn't fade. Jesus immediately reinforces it. A little later, while they're gathered in Galilee, he gives the second explicit prediction of his passion, verses 22 and 23.
Right. Let's hear that again.
Matthew 17.22-23. As they were gathering in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and he will be raised on the third day."
Notice the added detail here compared to the first prediction back in chapter 16. Now, he includes betrayed into the hands of men. It's getting more specific, closer.
It is. He's preparing them step by step. And he includes the resurrection. He will be raised on the third day. The victory is part of the prediction.
But look at their reaction. Despite the resurrection promise,
And they were filled with great sorrow, or exceedingly sad in some translations.
they hear the betrayed and killed loud and clear, but the raised on the third day just doesn't seem to register emotionally, does it?
It seems completely overshadowed by the grief of the impending loss. They could grasp the human tragedy of death, but the divine triumph of resurrection was still, it seems, beyond their emotional or perhaps spiritual grasp at this point.
That feels very human, actually. Sometimes the immediate pain or fear just blinds you to the longer-term hope, even when it's promised.
It's a powerful reminder of their struggle, and perhaps ours too sometimes.
So we've gone from the mountain peak glory down to the valley conversation about suffering and Elijah, and now the contrast becomes even sharper. Jesus, Peter, James, and John rejoin the other disciples and walk right into chaos.
Yes, the transition is jarring. They come down from divine communion to find human desperation and, well, failure. A crowd is gathered, and a man comes kneeling before Jesus. Verse 15 describes the situation, Matthew 17.15. Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and suffers terribly, for often he falls into the fire and often into the water.
The term epileptic there, the original is literally moonstruck, right? Reflecting the ancient belief about lunar influence on seizures, but the description is harrowing, falling into fire, into water. This is life-threatening.
Absolutely, and the father's desperation is amplified by what he says next in verse 16.
Yeah.
Matthew 17.16.
Yep.
And I brought him to your disciples, and they could not heal him.
Oof, that's gotta sting. Especially since Jesus had specifically given the 12 authority over unclean spirits and diseases back in Matthew 10. They'd done it before.
Exactly. They had the commission, they had the authority, they'd had success. So why the failure this time? It's a critical question.
And Jesus' reaction in verse 17 is quite strong. It feels like deep frustration.
It does, he says. Matthew 17.17. O unbelieving and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me.
Who is he addressing there? Just the disciples, the crowd.
It seems broader than just the 9 disciples who failed. He uses generation, suggesting the pervasive unbelief of the crowd, maybe the scribes who were likely arguing with the disciples, as Mark's account suggests. But crucially, that atmosphere of doubt seems to have infected the disciples.
So their failure wasn't in isolation. The surrounding negativity might have undermined their own confidence.
That seems to be the implication. Their faith wavered in the face of this difficult case and the skeptical environment. Jesus' lament is about the overall spiritual climate he's encountering.
But then the solution is immediate when Jesus steps in, verse 18.
Yes, total authority asserted. Matthew 17.18. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was healed instantly.
And Mark's parallel account clarifies the rebuke was to the spirit, confirming it was demonic possession causing the seizures. The healing is instantaneous and complete.
Which naturally leads the disciples to ask privately what went wrong. Verse 19.
Matthew 17.19. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?"
You can hear the confusion, maybe embarrassment. We had the power. Why didn't it work for us?
And Jesus' answer goes right to the core issue, verse 20.
That 17.20. He said to them, because of your little faith. For truly, I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you.
Because of your little faith. Not no faith, but little faith. That distinction feels important.
It's critical. They still had some faith. They obviously believed in Jesus and his power to some degree. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even tried. But it was weak, insufficient for this particular challenge. It was overshadowed by doubt, maybe fear of failure, perhaps impacted by the difficulty of the symptoms or the surrounding unbelief.
So the issue wasn't a complete lack of connection, but a lack of confident reliance on the authority they'd been given.
Precisely. And the mustard seed analogy reinforces this.
Right, the mustard seed was proverbially the smallest seed known then.
So Jesus isn't saying you need a huge amount of faith. He's saying even a tiny amount of genuine, focused faith directed entirely toward the power of God, can achieve seemingly impossible things, like moving a mountain, which was a common metaphor for overcoming huge obstacles.
So the potential isn't in the size of our faith, but in the object of our faith, God himself and our confidence in him.
Exactly. Their problem was that their small faith wasn't firmly fixed on God's power in that moment. It was faltering. The mountain of this demonic oppression seemed too big for their wavering confidence.
That's a really practical takeaway. Failure might stem from letting doubt creep in and diminish our reliance on God's power, even if we basically believe.
Yes. And then some manuscripts add verse 21, which gives a further practical dimension for particularly difficult cases.
Let's include that, acknowledging the textual variation. What does it add?
Verse 21 reads Matthew 17.21. But this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting.
This kind, referring to particularly entrenched or powerful demonic opposition.
It seems so. The implication is that while basic faith and reliance on conferred authority are usually sufficient, some spiritual battles require deeper preparation. Prayer signifies dependence on God, and fasting signifies earnestness and prioritizing the spiritual over the physical.
So it's not a magic formula, but rather about the spiritual state of the person ministering. A deeper level of reliance and focus might be needed for tougher challenges.
That's how it's often understood. It underlines that wielding spiritual authority isn't just about having the right credentials. It's about the ongoing spiritual condition and dependence of the disciple. It connects faith with disciplined practice.
All right, so we end the chapter with a shift in gears, from demonic battles to taxes. Specifically, the temple tax. They arrive back in Capernaum.
Yes, their home base for much of the Galilean ministry. And as soon as they arrive, verse 24, the collectors of the temple tax approach Peter. Matthew 17.24. When they came to Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax went up to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the tax?"
Okay, let's clarify this tax. This isn't Roman tax, right? This is the Jewish temple tax.
Correct. It was the annual half-shekel tax required of every Jewish male, based on the precedent in Exodus chapter 30, used for the upkeep of the temple in Jerusalem. It was a religious obligation, a sign of belonging to the covenant people.
And apparently there was some debate about who had to pay.
Yes, it was a bit of a sensitive issue. Priests and possibly some rabbis claimed exemption, arguing that those who served the temple shouldn't have to fund it. So the collectors approaching Peter are basically testing Jesus' stance.
Trying to see if he'll claim a special status, put himself above the common person's duty.
Exactly. Will he claim exemption and risk alienating patriotic Jews who valued the temple? Or will he pay, perhaps seeming to contradict his unique claims elsewhere? It's a subtle trap.
In Peter, true to form, verse 25a.
Matthew 17.25a. He said yes.
Just jumps right in with the compliant answer, probably without even thinking through the implications or checking with Jesus.
Seems typical Peter, wanting to avoid trouble, affirm Jesus' piety perhaps. But when they get inside, Jesus shows he already knows what happened. Verse 25b.
Math lesson 17.25b. And when he came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first, saying, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do kings of the earth take toll or tax? From their sons or from others?"
Jesus preempts Peter and uses this simple analogy about earthly kings.
And the answer is obvious. Peter replies in verse 26a.
Matthew 17.26a. And when he said, "from others,"
Kings tax their subjects, the others, not their own family.
right, and Jesus draws the direct parallel. Matthew 17.26b. Jesus said to him, "Then the sons are free."
The logic is clear. If earthly kings don't tax their sons, then the son of the heavenly king, God, is surely exempt from paying a tax for his father's house, the temple.
Precisely. Jesus asserts his fundamental exemption based on his unique identity as the Son of God. This connects back to his earlier claim in Matthew 12 that something greater than the temple is here. He is the reality the temple points to. He's not obligated to pay for its upkeep.
Yeah, so he establishes the principle, he is free, but then he immediately pivots. Verse 27 is the practical application, and it's fascinating.
It really is. This is where the wisdom comes in. Verse 27, Matt 17.27. However, not to give offense to them, go to the sea and cast a hook and take the first fish that comes up, and when you open his mouth, you will find a stater. Take that and give it to them for me and for you.
However, not to give offense to them. That's the key phrase, isn't it?
It's the driving principle here. Even though he has established his right to exemption, he chooses to waive that right to avoid causing unnecessary stumbling blocks or controversies that could hinder his mission.
He prioritizes the relationship and the mission over asserting his personal rights.
Exactly. It's a profound lesson in choosing wisdom and love over standing on principle sometimes. And the way he provides the money is, well, miraculous.
Yeah, a fish with a coin in its mouth. A stater, which was exactly the amount needed for 2 people, the half shekel, 2 drachmas, each for Jesus and Peter.
It's a demonstration of his divine power and provision, used not to make a grand statement, but simply to facilitate this act of voluntary compliance. He could have argued, he could have refused, but he chose peace.
So the miracle serves the lesson about avoiding offense. It's not just about the cool fish story. It's about the reason for the miracle.
Absolutely. The bigger point is the willingness to comply with societal or religious expectations, even when technically exempt. If insisting on exemption would cause unnecessary conflict or misunderstanding that damages the primary goal of spreading the gospel.
That's a challenging principle for us today, too. So looking back at Matthew 17 as a whole, it's incredibly dense. We've seen these huge themes play out.
3 major pillars, really. First, that foundational divine revelation. Jesus' glory revealed, the Father's affirmation, and the command, listen to him. That sets the stage for everything.
Then second, the reality of spiritual power and struggle. The disciples' failure due to little faith, contrasted with Jesus' authority, and the lesson that even mustard seed faith, properly directed, is powerful, sometimes needing prayer and fasting.
And third, this incredibly practical wisdom about navigating the world. Jesus asserting his divine rights as the Son, but then choosing voluntary compliance with the temple tax to avoid giving offense.
It really is like a microcosm of Jesus's whole ministry in the Christian life, isn't it? From supreme glory through the necessity of suffering down to practical, humble obedience in everyday matters.
You see, his identity, his mission, his method, all intertwined. The glory points to the cross, the power requires faith, and the authority is wielded with wisdom and humility.
It leaves us with a lot to think about. That final story, the temple tax, it really highlights a tension.
It does. And maybe that's the provocative thought to leave with everyone listening. We see Jesus, who had every right to claim exemption, deliberately choose not to exercise that right simply lest we offend them.
How often do we find ourselves in situations where we know we're right, or we have a right to something, maybe a privilege, an exemption, a correct understanding?
And how often do we insist on that right, maybe causing friction, resentment, or closing doors? Versus asking the question Jesus implicitly asked, is asserting my right in this moment going to help or hinder the greater goal, the mission, the relationship?
Are we willing to sometimes surrender our rightness to avoid unnecessary offense, to keep the door open for something more important?
It's that tension between principle and wisdom, between rights and relationships. Something powerful to consider in our own lives this week.